Good afternoon, all, and welcome to the Chamber of Commerce Southern New Jersey's virtual U.S. Small Business Association event entitled All You Need to Know About Filing for an SBA Disaster Loan. My name is Christina Renna, and I'm the President and CEO of the Chamber. Thank you to the over 100 people that have joined us today to hear from our presenter, Alfred J. Titone, District Director, New Jersey District Office with the U.S. Small Business Administration. Over the past few weeks, as the Chamber has adjusted to our new normal amid the COVID-19 crisis, one of our biggest adjustments has been moving from in-person events to virtual events while still providing members the educational content you need during these trying times. Certainly, navigating the SBA offerings is at the top of the list of questions that the Chamber staff gets, and as a result, today's presentation is both timely and extremely critical for many of you. A few housekeeping items before we begin. In a moment, I will formally introduce Al and turn the floor over to him to give remarks. Once he concludes, I will pose several questions that we receive from our members to him. As of now, we are not planning to take questions live. However, depending on the flow of the presentation and how quickly we get through the pre-submitted questions, we may be opening the chat feature later in the webinar. If that happens, I will be sure to alert everyone that the chat feature is now open. If, after the event, you have follow-up questions, comments, or thoughts, feel free to outline them in the survey you will be emailed. Our online events are being run just like our in-person events, and we are surveying our participants after each event for your thoughts, comments, and feedback. With those items out of the way, allow me to formally introduce today's guest, Alfred J. Titone. Al was named District Director for the U.S. Small Business Administration's New Jersey District Office on March 28, 2011. He brings with him a diverse background in both non- and for-profit businesses with a concentration in marketing, sales, and entrepreneurship. Al is responsible for directing SBA's efforts to assist over 700,000 small businesses in New Jersey with the agency's financial, contracting, and business development programs. Additionally, he has oversight responsibilities for 11 small business development centers administered by Rutgers University, 1 SBA-funded women's business centers, and 9 chapters of SCORE, Counselors to America's Small Business, a volunteer organization that provides free business counseling. Prior to joining the SBA, Al served as the regional director for the York College Small Business Development Center in New York for nearly 6 years. Additionally, he has run several small businesses, including 2 of his own, and subsequently counseled others on various aspects of operating and owning small businesses. With that, please join me in turning the floor over to Alfred Titone. Al, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Okay, so I should have gotten you the short version of that, huh? Okay, so what I'm going to do today, folks, I'm going to kind of go over our economic injury disaster loan program, as well as the PPP program, the payroll protection program, and then we'll take questions afterwards. There's a few things in the, so I just saw it because I know I'll catch myself using acronyms. Economic injury disaster loan is the same as disaster loan, is the same as EIDL. They're all the same thing for our things today. So the declaration was declared for New Jersey back a couple of weeks ago. And this is a special kind of declaration because it's one that initially the governors had to ask for because it wasn't a presidentially declared disaster at the time. So New Jersey actually did a great job of getting the information in, and they did all the work that was required of it normally. And then, of course, the day after they got approved, they made the application simple, but such is the way it goes. But Jersey actually did a great job of getting the information together and getting it in. We did work with them towards the end. If you have disaster loans from Sandy or one of the other several disasters that's happened over the year, you can get deferment for that for up to 6 months, as well as for 7A, 504, and microloans. So if you have any 7A loans, you can get a deferment for up to 6 months for those. So if it's not disaster and you have a 7A or a microloan, you can talk to the folks that you got the loan from, and they should be able to do a deferral for you. Who's eligible eligible for the EIDL loan. As you see here, small businesses, small agricultural cooperatives, aquaculture businesses, they're all able to get the loan, as well as certain nonprofits and faith-based organizations. You can borrow up to $2 million. The interest rates are 3 3/4 for small businesses, 2 3/4 for nonprofits. How much you get and eligibility is going to be based on size, okay, and the type of nonprofit. You can use the funds for working capital, so you can pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, and other bills that could have been paid had the disaster not occurred. Let me stress this and the PPP loan. These are not for you to try to make up lost profits. That's not what these are for. These are strictly for working capital. So under what we're calling the new EIDL application, it actually came on about 4 days after the original one. Had a number of advancements. Number one, if you go in there, it's really quick, really easy. I did a draft one the other day. It took me about 8 minutes to do. You can get up to $10,000 almost immediately. So what does that mean? That initially you might have heard everybody's getting $10,000. That is not the case. We just learned from Treasury over the weekend that it's up to $10,000. It's going to be based on the number of folks you have working for you or had working for you, mostly, as well as a couple other things that, income, other type of things. But it's going to probably average between 800 and, don't quote me on this, but this is just from what I'm seeing, 800 to 1,000 per employee. As you go through the process, and I'm going to actually go through the whole application because it is that quick, and a few things I want to highlight. When you do the new Streamline application, they will ask you if you want to be eligible for the advance. You'll click on the thing, enter your bank number, and you should be good. And that advance is available to everyone who applies. Again, it has to be used to pay fixed debts, payroll, accounts payable, etc. Again, it's not for replace lost sales or profits. And here's the important part right here. There is no requirement to repay the advance, even if you don't get the disaster loan application. So generally in the SBA, we don't talk the G word because we don't normally have them. So we just refer to this as a not have to repay loan. So you can take that how you like. So the EIDL is different from regular SBA loans in a couple of different ways. They come directly through the SBA from the U.S. Treasury. Most of our other loans are actually set up to do through lenders and banks. You can apply directly at SBA's website or at this site here. This will take you directly to the application. But if you go to sba.gov or sba.gov/NJ, you'll see there's a thing that says COVID right at the top. Click on that and it'll take you right to the application choices. You do not have to take the loan if it's offered. Okay, so you may apply and by the time you get the money, maybe you don't need it anymore. That's fine, you don't have to take it. Collateral is going to be required for anything over $25,000, but what they're doing differently is they're not taking real estate as collateral. They'll do a lien on your business collateral, but no personal guarantees are going to be, no personal property is going to need to be pledged. Personal guarantees will be required, but only for loans greater than $200,000, which is, again, not the normal for the EIDL loans. You can have an existing disaster loan like from Sandy or one of the other ones and still qualify for this. What you cannot do is combine them. So let's say you wanted to combine, let's say I had a big one from Sandy and you get a big one from here. You wanted to combine the two. You can't do that. And the reason is each disaster is, think of it like a silo. Normal SBA lending has a comprehensive total. So if you take out 3 SBA loans under normal 7A, you'd have a cap of $5 million. They don't want to do this with this. And so what they do here is every individual disaster has a maximum of $2 million. So you can take out more than the $2 million. So what's ineligible? Certain agricultural enterprises, Okay, if the primary activity is in 1618B1, they're not eligible. Illegal activity, so marijuana, keep in mind, marijuana is illegal at the federal level. So marijuana cannabis businesses are not eligible. If you're in gambling, those businesses are not eligible. Basically, if it's an illicit or gambling or illegal entity, obviously you're not going to get any, you're not going to be able to apply. Well, you can apply, you won't get the loan. You can apply here. You can also send an email and ask for an application form, or you can mail that form to the Processing and Disbursement Center in Texas. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend you do it online. If you want to pull the application down so that you have a copy to look at, that's all well and good, but do it online. The wait is already going to be long. It's it's in your best interest to do it online. Our resource partners across the state can help you with your financials, preparing statements, submitting, and to a degree, submitting the loan application. Our SBDCs and women's business centers will be more able to help you with that. The SCORE offices can certainly help you with the records and the financial statements, but they may not be able to help with the loan application. They haven't really been trained that much on that, but they're still great for the other stuff. Also, I know the state has a program where they've actually paid folks to help businesses with the application. That was with the old application. I mean, if you think you need help with the new one after we go through it, you're welcome to contact any of these folks. Get a drink of water. So when you click on this, when you click on this, it's going to take you to here. This is what you're going to see when you come in. So it's been very streamlined compared to the original, and it's really quick. A couple of things I need you to be very important, okay? This is going to be your first thing. This is going to be your business type. Really, really important that you click the proper one, because otherwise you get the wrong forms and you may wind up telling you that you're not eligible when in fact you are. If you're a sole proprietor with or without employees or an independent contractor, this is what you click. If you're just a regular small business with less than 500, this is what you click. Read each one and make sure you click the one that is most applicable to you. This is really important so that you get the right forms going through. These disclosures, these should all be checked. If for some reason you cannot check one of those, you can call the help desk, which will help you answer questions. But basically, not having one of these checked will kick you out of, they'll tell you that you're not eligible for the loan. Next part, you're just entering all your information, your name, etc., origination type. Are you a franchise? Yes or no. Your gross revenues, cost of goods sold, all the regular good stuff. Really important, you can't have a P.O. box for your address. Whether your primary business address is actually a building or your home, it doesn't matter, but it cannot be a P.O. box. Put in your email, the business established, all these various activities. Don't forget to include your number of employees. That's important. If you are owned, are you owned by another business entity? That will eliminate you because only the business can get the loan. Okay, so if you're owned by another business entity, that other business entity is actually the one that would possibly have to get the loan. So this may or may not get you kicked out. I would still answer it however you want and then see what happens. Most of our businesses this doesn't apply to, so it's not really an issue. Owner information, etc. You'll ask if there's another owner. If there is, you would need to fill it out. Okay, so these are other questions that you have to address. Saying yes in one of these does not necessarily mean that you will not get the loan. It just means that they may have some more questions for you, that's all. If somebody did help you with the application, you fill in that information here and you fill in the charge. Now, here's the important part. See in the red here, I would like to be considered for advance of up to $10,000. So you would click that, and the next thing that would appear is where they're supposed to send the funds. And obviously you do all these electronic things do. You certify that you've read and everything is true and the penalty of law, and your review will come up. Make sure it's all correct. I know all of us have a tendency not to fill these things, not to double check these. Make sure it's correct, because if it's wrong, they'll send you a question and then you go to the back of the line. So just make sure everything's correct. Okay? Tell them you're not a robot. You click submit and you're done. So before we go into questions, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the Payroll Protection Act, and we'll take questions after. Okay. So what is it? This is offered through our participating lenders. Everyone already saw on here that you can have this, right? You click on this to find. I'm sure a number of you have tried that and you're not having any luck. What initially this did was all previously approved SBA lenders. As more lenders get approved, and it's happening on a regular basis, more folks will show up in the search function. The whole idea of this is to keep workers on the payroll. You can use the funds for payroll costs, including benefits for pay up to 8 weeks of payroll costs. Funds can be used to pay interest on mortgages, rent, and utilities. Everyone can apply other than independent contractors and self-employed individuals who can start applying on April 10th. What are the terms? Maximum amount, $10 million. Interest rate is 1%. Your first payment will be deferred for 6 months. Maturity is 2 years. There are no collateral requirements. There is no personal guarantee. No borrower or lender fees payable to SBA. And the program's available through June 30th. A couple of things on the fees I want to stress. SBA for this program is not charging anyone fees, and there are also no fees charged for the EIDL program. So if you're going through somebody and they're charging you a fee, understand the fee is being charged by them, not by SBA. So you can still be charged something, but it would be charged by whoever's preparing it for you. If you think it's an unfair charge, reach out to the district and we'll try to follow up with you. So how will the loan be forgiven? 75% of whatever funds you get must be used for payroll as described above. Okay, and it's going to be based on the employer maintaining or quickly rehiring employees and maintaining their salary levels. Okay, so that's important. So if you rehire everybody, but you rehire everybody at 50% of what they were making, your loan's not going to be forgiven. All right, so the idea is that you bring people on at the level they were on up to, I believe, $100,000. Who's eligible? Small business with 500 or fewer employees. There are a few NAICS codes that this would not necessarily apply to. You could have more. And if you think you fall into that, let us know and or let the chamber know and we'll double check it for you. You can actually check it on SBA's website. So you can see pretty much everyone is eligible to apply for this loan. So you will owe money if you use it for anything other than payroll costs, mortgage, rent, utility payments over the 8 weeks. If you use less than 75%, what we just talked about. If you borrow staff, if your staff and payroll is at less than the February 15th, 2020 levels. You will get loan forgiveness if you maintain your head count. Salary and wages are maintained. Borrow has until June 30th, 2020 to restore full-time employment and salary levels from any changes made between February 15th and April 26th. These all count as payroll, okay? Salaries, wages, commissions, tips, benefits, payments required for health care, payment of any retirement benefits. For sole proprietors and independent contractors, it's wages, commissions, income, or net earnings from self-employment. Okay, so at this point, that was a lot of information. I will try to answer whatever I can. I am not guaranteeing I'll be able to answer every single question, but I will be happy to answer whatever I can.
Thanks so much, Al. We appreciate it. And you're right, a lot of information, but a lot of really good information. I know our members really, really need. So we do have several questions submitted to us from members. And so we're going to try to tick through. Some may have been answered in your presentation already, but a lot of the questioners didn't differentiate between EIDL and PPP. So that could be the reason why the question is asked. So we're just going to kind of tick through them. And even if you kind of covered it, it's good to reiterate it one more time. So one question we received is, which I don't know that you mentioned, you did say that for the EIDL loan, if like you gave the example during Hurricane Sandy, if you were approved then, and you can carry that over, you can't combine them. But can you apply for a PPP loan as well as an EIDL loan?
Yes, as long as you don't use them for the same thing. So if you're using your EIDL loan for payroll expenses, you can't use the PPP for that.
So then you would use the PPP for your utility bills or for anything else?
Right.
Okay. So I guess, obviously PPP opens April 10th.
They're open now, but
they are open now. Okay.
For 10th for sole proprietorships and contractors, individual contractors.
Okay. So let's say, all right, let's talk about the EIDL loan program first. Obviously folks have been applying for those now for several weeks. What is the timeline if I applied and it looks like I was approved? What is the timeline for businesses seeing that come through?
Okay, so the normal timeline for the disaster loans is around 21 days. I don't know if they're keeping to that. We'll find out shortly because we're getting pretty close to that. So I don't know if it's changed under the new EIDL. I've not heard anything different. The advance money was supposed to be in folks' accounts within 3 to 5 days. I have heard that that is not happening. We have questions put into the centers, but I have not gotten any answers as to why. My simple guess is just volume.
Volume, right.
It's volume, and it's just they redid the entire process about 4 days after the initial EIDL loan. That's why you saw in the thing, if you wanted to get the advance and you applied under the old system where you had to have like a lot more documentation than you knew under the new system, they actually tell you to apply again under the new system so that you can get the advance. With all that said, the basic turnaround time, I'm going to stick with the 21 days because I haven't heard other than that. But I'm not going to lie to you, I wouldn't hold your breath. There's literally millions of applications are coming in.
Sure. And is that 21 days for the PPP program as well?
They gave us no time frame on that. Normally, when you go through the delegated lenders, it's going to be a normal loan process. So it's going to be a couple of weeks. So I'm going to guess they're telling us they want to get money into people's hands ASAP.
Of course.
I don't know what that means.
Sure.
You heard the Treasury can say, but I'm going to tell folks, plan on at least a couple of weeks. Our normal process for a 7A loan from a delegated lender means that means a lender who has been approved by SBA to apply it for themselves. Generally, once the application is complete, there are no errors, is about 2 weeks.
So, and then of course we have April 10th for sole proprietors. I have a few questions very specific to sole proprietors. We'll circle back to that in a second. Do traditional SBA eligibility requirements apply, like gross receipt thresholds, for example, or?
A lot of them do not. they should go in and take a look, go to Treasury, go to their CARES Act site. Most, like the affiliation stuff, that doesn't apply. A lot of the normal SBA requirements do not apply under this
No.
loan. Size still applies, business size, but a lot of the other ones do not. So I strongly recommend people go take a look at the Treasury site. Has all the information. They haven't approved it for SBA site yet for whatever reason, but the Treasury site has everything folks would need.
Okay. What is available for 501c6 organizations?
Not a lot. As far as I know, the disaster is not, and I'm not, this loan maybe. I have not gotten guidance on that. That was actually a question I put in, but for everything else, not so much.
Okay. So we have some questions of folks that are working obviously through banks that have either applied for PPP or in the process of getting ready to because they're an independent contractor or sole proprietor. So we had one member reach out and say that they have spoken to several banks in preparation of April 10th, and the banks are referring people back to their personal bank where they're doing banking, where they do their primary banking. So, and then in the meantime, the personal bank is either already out of funds or for whatever reason, that's not a workable option either. In these circumstances, what options do people have if their personal bank's funds have already been tapped out and other banks that are, you know, approved to go through this process are not open to taking folks that don't do banking with them?
Okay, so I've heard a number of these stories, and I know a number of the banks we're talking about. There's really no limit, with one or two exceptions. There's really no limit on how much the banks can lend. The FDIC has actually waived a lot of the requirements. But what we are seeing, and so let me just be right up front. What we expected, at least what we in New Jersey expected, was that once this came out, banks were going to initially take care of their own and then move on from there. And we saw that. We also saw a couple of banks in particular where they didn't just take care of their own, they only took care of their own with certain criteria.
Mm-hmm.
And they even ignored other parts of their business, which kind of blew my mind. But we are bringing on more lenders every day. There's a lot of lenders in Jersey that are interested in this. And when we finally got the process going so they can apply, so lenders are coming on every day. Some lenders will continue to only stay with their own. That, you know, we can't, unfortunately, as the federal government, we can't tell people you must lend to these people, you must lend to that people. We can tell them in broad terms, you cannot discriminate against certain groups. Like you can't say, I don't want to lend to anybody in this ethnic group as opposed to that ethnic group. But we can't tell people you must accept applications from everybody. That's just the way it is. But what we do is we have been strongly encouraging lenders who have been somewhat restrictive to be less restrictive. And we're starting to see that a bit. As more lenders come on, I think we're going to see a lot more relaxing of the criteria. Like I said, most lenders, there's one or two in particular, because of past practices, have had a cap placed on them. But most other lenders can lend a fairly large amount of the money. Like I said, the regular caps aren't being, or the criteria aren't being set up for them. But also as we go through, we'll see more lenders, and we've actually put a request out to lenders, which we'll do on a weekly basis. Folks that are in the PPP program who normally would not be, because initially all the lenders who were doing this were SBA lenders already, and the other folks had to go through a process of getting approved, which they're starting to get through now. Keep in mind, this is, for all intents and purposes, this is day 2 of the program.
Sure.
Okay, so more and more lenders are coming on. We're trying to put a list together of lenders who are looking to do applications outside of their own clients. So I know that's a very long answer to your question, but I wanted to make sure people understood the process.
No, but it is a good answer. And as a matter of fact, I was in touch with the New Jersey Bankers Association yesterday, who did mirror a lot of what you're saying, in that more banks that were not previously SBA approved lenders are coming online. The process is taking a little bit of time, but there are going to be more options available
Mhm.
down the road for folks, which is a good thing. So that should help a little bit relieve some of the pressure on what you're seeing with some of the larger banks that are claiming to be tapped out or maxed out or whatever it may be. So we had a few questions on that, but I think your answer really covered most of our members' questions on the banking side. What about unemployment? And I think, I believe I know the answer on this, but if you went ahead and you filed for unemployment in New Jersey and you're getting that, of course, you're now getting unemployment in New Jersey, you're getting additional federal assistance in the form of the extra $600 on top of it. That does not impact EIDL or PPP at all. Is that correct?
It should not. I mean, I don't know a lot about the state unemployment program, but it should not affect those programs.
Okay. So we have a lot of questions from, either sole proprietors or micro businesses. So here's an example of one. The application. So I have a sole proprietor, or I'm sorry, I have a micro business here who do not have employees, but instead have independent contractors that they 1099 and part-time or full-time temp workers. So they're not sole proprietors in this case. They are a micro business, and they don't 1099 themselves either because they're the owners of the business. So it looks like they have no employees and no payroll, but that's not the case. So in this kind of unique circumstance, what would the best option for these folks be?
They should apply for the EIDL loan. They're not going to probably qualify for the PPP for obvious reasons. But the EIDL loan, they should be able to get money through.
Okay.
So they should apply for the disaster loan. And keep in mind, even if they are denied for the disaster loan, you have a period of time where you can reapply, because they'll tell you why you're not eligible, and then you can come up with your argument of why you are eligible.
Okay. And for those that are viewing, we are going to open that chat function to see if there's any questions that weren't submitted. You may have some clarifications. So we are going to open that. So the chat function is at the bottom. We'll be keeping an eye on that. But in the meantime, as they continue to come through, we still do have a few that were sent in advance to us that I want to get through. So here's one for you, Al. Why are limited partnerships not available for relief? So more specifically, this one member has more than 500 employees, but less than 2,000. So are there any relief options available for those companies? Those
Not to my knowledge, unless Treasury has something else. We strictly, it's not our call. This is SBA,
Sure.
It's 500 or less.
I will say that, organizations like ours and some of the other business organizations in the state are talking to our congressional delegation about whatever this fourth package looks like that comes down from federal government, obviously including, starting to take a look at some of these businesses as well, because they have very specific needs. So although there's nothing available now, who knows what will happen, but it's good to, potentially down the road know that folks are out there lobbying and asking for that assistance as well. I have one question as it relates to seasonal businesses. So this one member owns a summer seasonal business, and they applied for the PPP program and to help them cover their expenses until June 30th. And then if they're unable to open this summer and they get approved, will they still be able to apply for the SBA disaster loan on top of that?
Again, as long as you can apply for both, as long as you
Mhm.
don't use the money for the same purpose.
Okay.
So you should be able to, but yeah, I mean, it's really just dependent on not overlapping for the same use.
Sure. And then another kind of more specific one, we have, businesses like we have one member that's, a winery they operate a tasting room. So, what should they be checking in the box as far as business classification? Because a lot of agricultural are exempt, but are, you know, they're still a manufacturer or producer of a product. So is there any, what would your suggestion be for a business like that?
What I would suggest is that business take a look at what is eligible for the EIDL loan and what is not eligible for the EIDL loan and answer appropriately.
Okay. So go ahead and look at the guidance that has been given and take it from there.
Right. I can't tell them in particular what to do. And, you know, and I'm thinking about it with the summer business.
Mhm.
I don't know how long these EIDL loans will be available. So
Mhm.
if they think they may want it, there's nothing, they should just apply for the EIDL loan now. Because you don't have to take it if you don't get it. So for those summer businesses, I'd apply for it now. And like I said, if for some reason you get turned down, you have several months to reapply to get it.
So we have a question about if you're operating your business in your home, what percentage of home business expenses, utilities, mortgage even can be paid with the PPP?
I have no idea. Yeah, that's what do you do for your taxes? I mean, I guess that would be the one to go by.
Okay. Okay. We had one member put in the chat that they are hearing from multiple banks that they've stopped taking applications. So we've kind of touched on that. Are they holding them now to see if additional funding becomes available? So I guess you did speak to that a little bit, but.
What I'm not with is who holding them. I can't say what the bank is doing. All I can tell you, a lot of the banks have stopped taking applications because they've been overwhelmed. They literally have thousands and thousands of applications that have to be processed.
Sure.
My guess is that as these get processed, as long as they have the facility and the desire, they will take in more applications. But you know, you don't want to tell somebody who's looking to borrow money, sure, we'll take your application, and then you don't get for a month and a half. Where you might be able, in a week, you might be able to find another lender that does it. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
the lenders that are doing that are actually being good citizens. It's basically telling folks, hold off. You don't have applications. I'm not saying they're all being good citizens because some of them are not. But for the most part, you know, they're basically telling you, look, we got a lot of applications. We can't do anything. And this, like I said, it's only day 2. This is a whole new track for SBA, even though it's going under our regular program. This is a whole new track for us. So it's going to take a while to get all the lenders up to speed. You know, it's going to take probably a week or so, but we've got a lot of lenders that are applying for this and we're seeing more get approved. So I expect the backlog to start to dissipate.
So, and we did obviously already talk about this, the delay, the backlog is just pure volume. But in your opinion, because this is an opinion, how long is too long to wait? So if we had someone that applied for an EIDL back in, you know, the second to last week of March, let's say, and they still haven't heard anything, and we're now April 7th today. Is that normal, or should these businesses, in your opinion, be more proactive and be reaching out to get a status check, or is that kind of delay what you're seeing? What is your, you know, opinion?
If it's been 25 days, then I'm just going to throw this out here. Like I said, the average turnaround is 21. If it's been 25 days since you applied and you haven't heard anything, I would follow up. But also, if you go to the new site and you have your loan number, you can put your loan number in and it will tell you where you are in the process. But remember, the normal processing time is 21 days. So with this one, won't be surprised if it's longer than that. But at 25 days, you know, then I might start following up with the disaster folks and seeing, you know, what they can do.
Let's talk about documentation again. You did touch on it in your presentation, but what kind of documentation is required to establish loss of revenue for both programs, EIDL and then PPP?
There's a whole big thing in there, but basically everything that you're going to have to prove afterwards, you got to prove before. So you're going to need to be able to prove payroll. You're going to be able to provide what your costs are that are covered under the PPP. All that paperwork that you pay on a monthly basis for your employees, for your rent, for your overhead, you know, all those things that you want to get money for, you've got to be able to prove in the front half, and you're going to have to be able to prove that you provided it in the back half. So
Yep. And
pretty
that's
much
for
the
both
whole
programs.
financial life. Yeah.
For both programs. Thanks.
No, not for idle is a whole different, no. I'm
Oh,
sorry, that was
okay.
for the payroll protection. Idle is a whole different thing. The old
Okay.
idle, you needed to do a lot more. This one is basically what I showed you in the presentation. It's really very streamlined. So they're asking for a lot less on the disaster loan side than they are on the payroll protection
On the
program.
PPP side. Okay. Do you have any idea how long the EIDL program is going to stay in place? You know, does it
They
expire?
have not given, yeah, they have not given us an end date yet, but it's normally at least 6 months.
Okay.
But
I
that's a
think
normal.
that was the case with, was that the case with Sandy?
Yeah, and actually they extended it to a year afterwards, I think.
Yep, I remember
But
that.
but it's normally right around 6 months, so I think you can expect that at least. We have not been given an end date yet, so
Okay.
anybody who's hearing, that's one of the rumors that are out there that it's ending. It's not ending. I'll let you know when it ends.
Okay. Thanks, Al. Here's another question that came through the chat. Should owners whose pay draws include those wages as payroll? Should owners who pay draws include those wages as payroll, even though no taxes are being withheld?
Okay, one more time. Should what?
Should owners who pay draws?
Okay, draw. Okay.
Yeah.
It depends on how the draw is set up.
Okay.
Is it a draw that has to be paid back, which is normally what a draw is, but some folks say, well, you need to let them draw, but they kind of let it go. That's a good question.
Yeah.
I'm going to say probably not, because if you, let me double check. My out loud thought process is, if you do that, then you need to prove when you've paid the draw. And if you didn't pay the draw, now you've claimed that you paid the draw and you didn't. You know, you're taking credit for money that you paid out, expecting to get paid back. So my gut says probably not, but I can double check that.
Okay. Justin, we'll get back to you on that one. Sorry, I'm just scrolling in the chat. So we have, this is a good one. So someone already applied for the EIDL loan program. Can they go back in and see their application once it's been filed?
Yes, once you've got a loan number, I mean, initially you couldn't, it was hard, but they've revamped the system. So you should be able to go in, put your loan number in, and find out where it is in the process.
Okay. Will lenders be able to be picky and choosy based on industry type? So are they going to be able to, you know, I own a gym, I'd rather not lend to this because I'd rather lend to this landscaping company. I'm making that up. But
well, the bottom line is the lenders can always be picky to an extent. It's not the intent of the legislation, but again, it's America. So we're giving them money to lend, and we have put certain restrictions on that money that they can or cannot do. But the biggest thing that they're really going to be looking for, and what we've instructed, and when I say we, I mean people way much higher than me, have instructed them to do, is potential for payback once the loan has gone through. So that's really what they're supposed to be looking at. As long as that, and it's not an illegitimate business, as I outlined earlier, you know, not illegal, not gambling, you know, nobody's running numbers or something, you know, it shouldn't happen too much.
So we have a question here about how long you must maintain your workforce under the PPP to be forgiven and have it not be converted to a loan. Do you have any insight into that?
I believe it's the 8-week period.
Okay.
That is my understanding. If it's different than that, I'll let you know, but I'm pretty sure it's the 8-week period.
Now, if it ends up being converted to a loan, do you have any idea what that percentage rate would be on it?
1%.
1%. Okay. We have a request here for clarification on the restoration of employees on the PPP loan. So employees can collect unemployment, and as long as the company rehires prior to June 30th, would the company still qualify for loan forgiveness?
The employees are collecting unemployment
Yep.
and they rehire them on June 19th.
Yep. Yep.
Well, as long as they're not still collecting unemployment and they keep them on for 8 weeks, it should be forgivable. Is that the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we have two questions here. One, is there a risk the PPP program will be oversubscribed and run out of funds?
There's always that risk. Do I think that that will happen? Possibly. What we're seeing so far, I haven't been able to get down into the nitty gritty, but what we saw with the first announcement from the administrative number of loans and stuff, they're averaging around 325, 350 a loan. Okay. In New Jersey, it looked like more like 310, but it doesn't really matter because it's one big pot, right? So I think it's going to last for a little while. I think what we'll see in a few weeks, in a couple of weeks actually, is once we get a lot of lenders on and these applications really starting hitting, yeah, is it possible? Yeah, it is possible. I don't know how, I can't make any prediction when, but I'm hoping that I am absolutely wrong and that, within a couple of weeks, things start turning around, we can start opening businesses. Most of the professionals say no, but I try to be an optimist with this stuff. Summer's coming.
What information does a company need to provide to the bank for the PPP program? So for example, tax returns, financial statements, does the bank determine the information that is being required, or does SBA determine that?
So the bank, you have to put in all the stuff that, we talked about earlier. The bank has to check to make sure what you submit makes sense. And then they submit it to the agency and the agency has a final call. So the bank they'll check for minimum standards, whatever the minimum is on this. And again, they actually have guidance through Treasury, what it is that they have to look for. So they'll do that. But then after that, it goes to SBA and SBA makes the final call. But to be perfectly honest with you, we don't see a lot of these getting rejected other than maybe catching people who are trying to fraud.
Okay. So we have a question here. I have a loan application number for the original EIDL and then a different number for the EIDL advance. So in this case, the question is they want to confirm that they're going to be considered for both. So since they have separate numbers, does that mean they're going to be considered for both programs?
Sorry. Wrong pipe. All right, so the EIDL, it's the same. All right, so what we were told is when folks that had the old EIDL and they applied for the new EIDL so they could get the advance, they wouldn't lose their place in the queue. So he or she could actually take each one of the numbers and put them into the system. Again, you go to the new application system, there should be a place there for you to track your loan. You can put both loan numbers in. What you might find is that the older one has been replaced by the new one. So if you put the older one in, what you may find is that it tells you it's not an active number. Don't panic. Put the new one in, and because it's supposed to replace your old one. So
you're no longer getting both. You're getting one or the other. And if you apply for the latter, the newer, of course, then that's the one you're going to be in the queue to receive.
At least in theory, yes.
Okay. And so there's a few questions on here about tracking. So just to clarify again, there's a way that you can go log in, look at your application. Is there a way to track the status as well?
Yeah, that's what this is for. You're supposed to
Okay.
be able to enter your loan number in there and they'll tell you where in the process you were. It may just be being processed. I mean, I don't know. I don't have a loan number, so I couldn't check that. But
Okay.
you should be able to.
So for loan forgiveness, do all of the loan proceeds need to be incurred by June 30th?
For loan, all the loan process not to be incurred by June 30th. Yes, you have to have everything set up by yes, you have to have, actually, I think it's the 20th, I think. You have to have everything set up and the employees on board by that date, yes. But I think it's the 20th. I don't think it was the 30th.
All right, so we have another question here. If you are approved for a PPP loan and the amount that you qualify for using the 2.5 times payroll formula is more than you would normally expense out as payroll and the other allowed expenses, what do you do with the surplus?
Well, we keep in mind what I said now, 75% has to be used for all that employee, et cetera. 25% can be used for other things.
Yep.
So I don't believe there's any limitation on what you can use that with as long as it's legal. So I don't believe there's a limitation on that. I think that's part of the reason they did that formula. So that you would have this little extra for stuff that you may not anticipate.
So if you bring back all of your employees, could you increase their pay to consume the surplus or no?
You could. I don't know that that's necessarily good business practice. I mean, if it were me in my business, I'd make sure the employees are where they were, and I would use that surplus, either leave it, as backup in case I need it for something else, or other costs that you can use it for that are business related that don't necessarily have to go to that 75%. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Can you apply for PPP loans at multiple institutions and then select the quickest one to respond?
I would strongly, strongly advise against that, and I'll give you 2 reasons.
Okay.
One, and the most important, is that if the agency catches more than one application, they'll probably stop anything else in your name and investigate for fraud. Okay, so I've heard a number of people doing this. You're taking a chance. So yes, you could, in theory, do it and you might get away with it. But if later on they find there are multiple applications from the same individual or same companies, you're kind of setting yourself up for a fraud investigation. I would not do that. And the other reason is you should already, if you're doing your research, rather than going out and throwing, a bunch of stuff against the wall and see if it'll stick, talk to the lenders who are willing to pull in your application, because they'll tell you what their turnaround time is.
Okay. We have a question from a small nonprofit. Employees are all part-time and paid hourly. Can the PPP program funds be applied?
Yes, they should be. You just count them what we call full-time equivalents. So let's say you have 2 part-time employees that both work 4 hours. Well, that's 1 full-time equivalent. That's 1 8-hour day. So yes, they should be able to be used.
Okay, we had a few people that came on a little bit late. So do you mind reiterating one more time for us, Al, the percentage rates on the EIDL program and the PPP program?
Sure. So for the EIDL, the disaster loan program, it's 3 3/4 for for-profits, 2 3/4 for nonprofits up to 30 years. And for the PPP program, it's a 1% interest rate if you wind up having to pay it, if you do not meet the qualifications for have it waived.
Got it. Thank you for that. Regarding the PPP loan, when does the official 8-week period begin?
I believe it's from the day you actually get the loan.
Okay. A few questions about the slides today. Are these slides that are made available, Al, or are they?
I can't make them available right now. There are a number of reasons for that I'd rather not go into, but I just wanted to make sure I got the information out there. But everything that's on these slides is again on the Treasury site, which I can get to you, Christine, and you can get out to your folks. It's actually got all the information you need is in there. It's not as pretty as this, but it's
Well, you know, Al, we're running right up against our end time, so we want to make sure we get you out. We know you probably have about 4 more of these left to do with other organizations after you're done with our chamber. So I want to thank you. You know, we talked on the front end before before we went live that, you know, should you provide more or less detail? And obviously the devil is absolutely in the detail with this. So we appreciate you walking us through this presentation, answering our pre-submitted questions, answering the questions in the chat, and to everyone who would ask for the slides, we'll get you the most accurate information we can following up on all of this once we conclude. So Al, I want to thank you again for joining us. To all who
pleasure
today, you will be getting an email survey, so please give us feedback on today's presentation. We certainly hope this helped. And if your question wasn't answered, feel free to come back to us, put it on the survey or email me directly, and we'll try to get you an answer. With that, thank you all for joining us and have a great rest of your day. And thanks again, Al.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.